want to be conscious of where we are. We were here a year ago, almost exactly, on Indigenous Peoples Day, something the city stepped forward to create. Some place here that the city itself started in. Pico House was built where the Pueblo was founded, which sits atop Tongva territory. And we re-gifted this, or gave back more properly, this indigenous land to an unrecognized tribe, which makes it complicated. But the Tongva who lived here and who live here now have the control of our collective city's land here, a way for us to make reparations to those folks whose land we are on. And yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day, which should have been a day of celebration and perversely was a day of pain, a day of brokenness. But I want to recognize where we are and who has been here before us. We sit next to where the city's first Chinatown was, where the largest mass lynching in American history occurred, when after a couple criminals that came down from San Francisco shot at some police officers here, the entire city went after everybody who was Chinese at that time, even though those criminals had long fled, which resulted in dozens of Angelenos of Chinese descent being hanged within 3 and 4 blocks from here and shot. We sit here a block away from Union Station, which is a gateway in and out of our city, even today, for those who come looking for help and for hope. But we sit here in the heart of a city broken. Today we are broken. We feel that brokenness and that pain today at every single level. I wanted us to come together. I'm still your mayor for 61 days more. And somebody asked how I was doing the other day. I said, I'm neither checked out nor clinging to power. And this was before this weekend. I said, I'm in every single hour of every single day of every moment while I have been empowered to be here. And Susan Goldberg, who spoke when I first became mayor on that day, or I guess it was the day before technically, but we did the ceremony a day early so I could get to work at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. the next day, knows that here and in this moment it requires all of us to do 2 things: to be honest about our pain, but to be ready to lead in our city. And each one of you is here because you are leaders. Each one of you is here because you define our city. Each one of you is here because we can't let 3 or 4 voices define what LA has been, is, and certainly not will be moving forward. So first and foremost, this is about individuals. And I stand today with Sean and Mike and their son. As a father, as kind of a co-padre, who as adoptive parents and foster parents who have gone on this journey together for many years. We're second here, not just as individuals, but as communities, plural. The communities that defined us. We're not part of ever just one community, but we're here as the community of how we define ourselves in terms of our gender, the communities that we have that are cultural, that others have defined over time and that we have claimed racially, religiously. The discrimination that we heard, the hate that we heard this weekend, somebody said was like a Yahtzee card filled out. It hit almost everybody. It hit our Black Angelenos. It hit women. It hit our LGBTQ plus community. It hit our indigenous communities. It hit our AAPI communities. It hit parents. It hit our Armenian community. There was nobody spared. Somebody once said that hate always lives, right? It kind of lives dormant under rocks, waiting to come out. You can never quite extinguish it, but our role is to contain it, to try to make sure it doesn't see the light. But our third level of pain is not individual or just the communities that are in pain, but our city. And I do want to offer to you, we do have a city. It's a confusing city. We chop it up into many pieces. But it's LA. We know what it is in our heart. I certainly saw it coming here this morning, and I'll get back to that as well. It's not enough today just to say that I see you, but I want you to know that I see you today as individuals, and I see our communities who so often are missing from the conversations. And I acknowledge the pain of this moment because it came from City Hall. That's what's heartbreaking. But to move forward, I would offer this before we turn to some comments from others, is I believe as your mayor we need three things to move forward. First and foremost, and they are sequential, we need justice. I called yesterday for the resignation of the individuals, my colleagues, based on what we learned, and I don't believe that there is any other way out of this. It's not a political point. It's not a point of convenience. It's not a point of trying to sweep anything away. It is the only way forward. And even in our hearts, as we contain that people are contradictory and complicated, and people who have done good things can say terrible things as well, there is no way for them as individuals forward, and certainly most importantly for our institutions, and above that our city, to move forward without that. So I understand, and I precede everything I say, that justice is the first step. If we don't have that, we don't go to step two. But second, we need to prepare. In some ways, this conversation predates that first step being resolved. But we have to prepare for the rebuilding of this city. We have to prepare for the spiritual rebuilding of this city and the continuing dismantling of the things that have been built wrong in the city for a long time, a conversation all of you have been a part of with me for the past many years, if not decades. And I want to offer a third thing besides justice and the rebuilding, which is kindness. This one actually doesn't come before or after. There's not a lot of space probably in people's hearts right now for kindness, and I understand that. I don't tell people to keep their rage to themselves on a day when we need to rage. But I think that part of what hurts me so much of what I heard was first and foremost the exercise of power based on so many things and the tropes that turn communities of color against each other and that are used against communities of color, that exist within communities of color, that happen to women, to our LGBTQ plus communities, and so on and so forth all the time. But the second piece is just plain meanness and the kindness that's missing in our world in so many ways, long before they cross a line that is racist speech or that is sexist action. I do believe that the kindness itself is something I hope we will all figure out ways to pay forward. When somebody asked me yesterday, what can I do beyond feel this pain? I said, go do something kind to someone today, right now. Act, and let your heart feel that. So for justice, my three colleagues need to step aside. I will continue to be an early, often, and frequent voice. There's nothing I'm sharing with you that I haven't shared with them privately. And yes, there are nuances. Yes, there are differences, but all three need to step down for our city to move forward. And then we need to open up the pathways for, I understand the town hall essentially that is city council right now, and there's a lot of anger there today, a lot of cussing and a lot of rage. It's almost impossible to contain, but thank goodness there's a meeting going on and everybody will be heard today. But we have to open up pathways for people to do harder work than that. That's necessary work to get to next steps. But where you have good deeds left unfinished, we have to figure out the work together to pass them on. And I'd also say this at a moment of transition for our city. It would be much more convenient for our city if this happened earlier in my time or a little bit later when a new mayor is there. We're going to have to be handing off literally the baton of leadership, both in my office and with new council members. But I think that a city is defined not by its leaders, but it's defined by its collective residents. That if we don't define ourselves, not in those moments that we set out to do and are judged whether we do them, but the ones we don't expect to happen. Think about the last few years. We didn't expect a pandemic to hit us. but it defined who we were. This is one of those moments where I say we're defined by that we don't expect to happen and how we react to it. So for rebuilding, let's do more than just get through this. Here in a city that is leading on a discussion on reparations, let's push forward. Here in a city that led this nation in establishing Indigenous Peoples Day, let's not erase those stories anymore. Here in a city that has literally money that we've put aside through LA Repair this month, where communities can vote on and take their own tax dollars to spend locally on things that have to do with racial justice, that's a pretty darn good place to channel the rage that we have into material change around us. And let us hold accountable my successor to make sure that these things you created through me, not me telling the city to do them, sustain and grow. Our Civil and Human Rights Department and its work, our healing centers where people have said for too many years, we need to deal with the trauma in our communities of racism and we need places to go and to be. And we shouldn't settle for there just being one or two. But this is a moment where we could have benefited from having 15 or 20 of those in our community. Words spoken behind closed doors carry a lot more than just the pain and the plain truth of prejudice. They reveal the rot of systems. And so our civic conversation can't just be about opening up our hearts. I would put before to you, if I can frame this, it's about how we write our charter and how we do redistricting, how we appoint people to council committees. I've been talking to council members over the last day, and I'd like to apologize to everybody I haven't been able to reach out to personally here. As you can imagine, a person with even 20 hours in a day, I spent most of my time trying to save the institution that you need to work in order for the city's business to move forward. And they are on board, and we will collectively talk about that, about how it is time for charter reform again in this city, how we need to take redistricting out of the hands of politicians or politically appointed people, how we have to make sure that when there are vacancies in the city council, maybe we move as quickly as we can to elections for people to elect them rather than appointments from a city council, and how we can do things like I think all of you that are commissioners have to do, having our elected officials abide by codes of conduct when they're sworn in to make those pledges to how we will treat each other so that it's conscious in their mind that they have taken that sworn commitment as well. And we want that list to grow with your input of those things we can do within the city itself, the city governance. Yesterday, some of you joined me for a conversation under the Brown Act, a minority of each of these commissions, but of our Civil Rights Department's commissions collectively. And we got very important suggestions and ideas. And I also said this is a moment not just to wait for hierarchy to ordain it's okay to do things. Build collective leadership, but commissions and organizations and communities should organize themselves right now and put forward those changes, should call for the things that you want, should condemn the people who need to be condemned, and should push for the justice and the resignations that we need as well. Kindness, finally, just like our hate, sometimes lives under the rocks. But in a good way, we need to coax it out. There's not a lot of rewards for kindness these days. People get more likes for hating people. Sometimes that hate feels very justified, and that's, you know, we unfortunately saw a president elected one administration ago that in some ways opened up gates even for those of us who are progressives to change the way we talk, because he subconsciously modeled that for us. But I think the hard work and vigilance of finding and spreading the kindness is really something I invite you to lead on inside your organizations. And I know so many of us are having those internal conversations today with our employees and our colleagues who are just heartbroken and heartsick, who are trying to navigate through this moment as we did 2 years ago when George Floyd was killed. But we also need to give them ways to find that kindness to one another. I don't want anybody to lessen their anger, but I don't want you to live there, always. So with that, let me turn this over now to you all and the voices that we're asking to say some words. First, to Capri Maddox, and I want to thank her. You don't know why you do things like a seismic retrofit piece of legislation when there's no earthquake around, because you don't know when it's going to hit. But the work to create a civil and human rights and equity department in the city, we created not knowing when we'd need it, but God knows we need it right now, and we are blessed to have it, and this leader, Capri Maddox.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Very, very grateful. Thank you so much, Mayor Garcetti. And I want to remind some folks that in the winter of 2020, that's when the mayor said we need a civil rights and equity department. And that forward thinking has not stopped after the department was created. Everything that I have asked the mayor's office to do has been a yes, and let's figure it out. And I just can't thank you enough, Mayor Eric Garcetti, for standing for justice, equity, inclusion in the City of Angels. We appreciate you, we lift you, and at this time we know that you love all of us. I'm so excited to be here with so many faith-based leaders, so many civic leaders. You all lift up a better Los Angeles in your respective roles. I'm sorry we're here under these circumstances. As an African-American city employee, it took me even some time to realize that I'm hurting as well. We're so used to, a lot of us in this room, of just doing and fixing and making things better because that's who we are. I see you, Najee Ali, back there. I want you to know that when you are always creating solutions, a lot of times you don't feel the pain. And so there have been times that I think we just need to take a moment to let you all know that we see you, we feel you. And as the mayor stated, there wasn't a community that really was left out of being discriminated against. And that's why we say here at LA Civil Rights that hate is hate is hate. And together we know that love is love is love, and that we are lifting a better Los Angeles, whether it's through the repair programming that will be run by David Price, someone that is lifting a better LA through the equity and number of equity team members that are present here with us. But I think it's important to also know that the LA for Everyone campaign, you may see it, it's right behind me in Spanish. You've seen it all over the city. It's an award-winning campaign, 18 languages, 5,000 locations in the city. And some of you are aware that just a few weeks ago, we lit up the entire city of Los Angeles, the 6th Street Bridge, LAX, the the U.S. Bank Tower building, as well as City Hall and other locations. But we can't stop there because these were hurtful words. Again, things that we can't unhear, but we have to move forward together. And that's the only way really to get through this, is to go through this. This is probably not even 5% over, folks. And so I'm grateful that you all showed up today for us, but we're going to really need you to show up in the next couple of years as we heal our city. I want to also to acknowledge the fact that we have peace and healing centers that are part of our department. Also led by David Price's work, and I think an equity team. But I think it's important to know that peace and healing, starts with us. And this is not just a prayer service, but it's a call to action. And we definitely need all of you with your respective roles to stand with us to choose an LA that is for everyone. So today we're going to pray. Tomorrow we're going to have action because we need to hold folks accountable for this crisis of hate in the city of Los Angeles and to call out hate regardless of who says it. And together we can do this. We are the city of angels. We are the messengers for the entire world in some instances, but definitely United States. And I want you to know that we are a city that can heal. We are the city that is better than this. The LA that I know had Biddy Mason find her freedom here, right? Cesar Chavez built his movement with Angelenos. LA is the home to the first Pride Parade in our East LA walkouts. And you should know that When we think about Koreatown or Leimert or the San Fernando Valley, we know that we are a united Los Angeles, and our parts, the sum of our parts aren't who we are. We are a united Los Angeles, and we stand together for a better LA, and particularly an LA that is for everyone. Thank you. With that, Mr. Mayor, are you acting as MC? Mm-hmm.
Adelia, if I can ask you to come forward, I want to ask first Adelia Romero, who's the co-founder and CEO of Cielo, which works to give voice to our indigenous communities and to bring power to their needs as well, to say our first words. Adelia, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Padir Shnabajire, Shalajoshub Shendija. What I said in my language, well, it's good that we're having these conversations of the inappropriate words used by the people, the eyes, the head, the body that is supposed to be watched, supposed to watch over us. And yes, that doesn't make any sense to you. It would be easy, like for the awful words that these leaders made. But I wanted to give you an example of how my language is descriptive. There's no such thing as just saying hello. What I said, are you all seated and standing there? Because my language is different. It's not Spanish. It's not a dialect of Spanish. It's a language of its own. And I stand here today, I'm going to start with a personal story. I came here 41 years ago. I'm 51. I'm a dinosaur here, but, you know. And when I came here, nobody knew that I spoke another language. Nobody understood why I was dressed differently. Or why was I not wearing shoes? I still don't wear shoes today. I have my huaraches. You know, nobody understood that. And they would ask me, are you Hispanic? I would say yes. Are you Mexican? I would say yes. I would say yes to everything because I didn't know what it was. Because as far as I knew, I was Sogochense, a person from Sogocho, which is my hometown back in the highlands of Oaxaca. And people will call me names, and I didn't understand why. I didn't have those same words that were mentioned by our city officials, but I didn't understand. I didn't know how to label them or how to name them. I did not know that was racism. I did not know that was prejudice and discrimination. I went through the LAUSD system, and nobody ever found out I spoke Zapoteco. I still have challenges expressing myself in English and in Spanish, and now in Zapotec because I make no sense of the three languages. All right? Nobody knew. My mother used to work at a garment, in the garment industry, that we're talking before NAFTA. You know, and she was also monolingual, and she came here earlier. And one day I asked her, once I knew the words, did you ever felt discriminated against? And she said, well, I don't know what it was, but there was this man from Jalisco who was the manager, and every time he will walk by and he will say, you Oaxacans are so short. And I would just bow. I would not say anything. And I said, Mom, why didn't you respond? She's like, because I didn't know how to respond in Spanish. It took me many years before I could say, well, you're pretty short too, and you're not from Oaxaca. And I will tell you the story of another man that went into LA County Hospital. He was 98 years old. He broke a hip. The doctors were wondering why was he so healthy if he was actually living in LA. He had no cholesterol, no diabetes, only a broken hip. When they tried to take his blood pressure and put in the IV, he slapped him in the hands. And we said, well, he needs an interpreter. He only speaks a few variants of Zapoteco and Mije. And the city employee said, what is that? We explained. We requested an interpreter. Did he get one? No. They say he's praying in Spanish And I say, well, the colonizer did a great job by teaching us how to pray, but that doesn't mean we understand. So we insisted to deny him an interpreter. And they say he only behaves well when the family's here. Of course, because they're speaking his language. They had that hip replacement surgery. They asked him to move his legs so he wouldn't get blood clots. He didn't understand. He didn't move. They amputated his leg. He died a month after, not understanding what had happened to him. This is what happens when there's an assumption that we're all Latinos and that we all speak Spanish. It's deadly, it's dangerous. And the comments that were made were very hurtful. You know, because when your city officials make these comments, how do you think your employees are going to react at county hospital? And we end up losing a person, losing children within the system. So it's very dangerous, but we need to move forward. Yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day. Tomorrow is 530 years since the arrival of the Spaniards. It's a painful moment for us in history. But it's only 530 years because we have been here thousands of years. We have been speaking our language thousands of years, wearing our regalia thousands of years, eating our food thousands of years. And the root causes of our displacement to end up here is always a question that they ask us. But why don't, if you don't speak Spanish or English, why do you come? We're being pushed out. Indigenous people hold 80% of the natural resources of the world. And we only make 10% in the world, in Africa, in Latin America, around the globe. Capitalism, or we all need our gadgets, our iPhones, our energy-saving cars, but they come from somewhere, from indigenous peoples. So we gotta rethink, like, how do we welcome indigenous people of the world that are gonna end up in LA? How do we welcome our African relatives, too, that are being displaced, our Garifuna relatives? Migration of indigenous people around the globe is not going to stop. As a matter of fact, it's going to increase because, you know, the extractiveness of natural resources started 500 years ago. And, well, I'm not going to get to my entire speech. I have 30 seconds. But I think with this, I want to say we have to join forces with our Black brothers, our LGBT, our relatives. We cannot let Latinidad divide us. We have to stay strong and begin a conversation with the next mayor about how we move forward and how we create a language access plan for the people that don't speak the dominant languages. And you, all of you, have to start that uncomfortable conversation at home when somebody makes a comment about everybody's Latino. No, not everybody's Latino. LA has the largest diversity of indigenous languages. There are 17 indigenous languages spoken in LA County, according to our survey. You have to be that uncomfortable person when somebody makes an anti-Black remark in your family, in your circle, and stop them right there and then. Thank you, George Crenley.
Thank you, Adelia. Thank you very much on behalf of all of us. I forgot that the hymn was going to come first, so we're going to do the hymn second, but I'm going to ask to now hear a hymn of unity.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassion, they fail. is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All thy hast needed, thy hands hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Pardon of sin and peace is that endureth, thine own dear presence to hear and to guide, strength for today and hope bright for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All thy hast needed, thy hands hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto thee.
Thank you, Grace Nathaniel from Oasis Church. That was the hymn that I used to put my baby Maya to sleep with. So thank you. I didn't know the choice ahead of time, but it's a very meaningful one to our family. Next, and I need to introduce him, is Capri Maddox's pastor, because she came up very worried she had neglected to say that. But a man who helped me get through so much in this city, who's been a dear brother, friend, and partner, whose church is in the heart of our city and whose church is the heart of our city, and helped me through a prayer circle in the darkest days of the pandemic, for which I'm very grateful. I'd like to ask Pastor Boyd to come forward from our First AME Church to say some words now.
Thank you, Mayor Garcetti, for being a shepherd for the City of Angels and being a caring, compassionate, balanced, courageous, but yet sensible leader in moments and times of crises, and for the vision that you have exercised in placing Capri Maddox in the position that you placed her in giving recognition and the kind of forward guidance that the city needs as it relates to civil rights and human rights across the city and across the state. And thank you to those of you who are gathered. If we look at the diversity that we see in so many ways, we just stand in awe of the creative beauty that God has allowed to just marinate and do what it does in so many ways. The tapestry of the sky on a dark, crisp night is made beautiful when it's decorated by stars and the appearance of various other galaxies around. To look at the beauty of a rainbow and know that the power of a rainbow is not made possible except through its multiple colors. And to look at the beautiful arrangement of a bouquet of flowers that decorates a table and brings life to a room is made beautiful through the diversity of colors that are included in them. Those of you who got up this morning and like the man, like Capri, you got up and you looked in your closets and decided what you would wear. You made sure that there would be a mixture of colors, that there would be diversity in your wardrobe, what you choose to represent yourself with here today. And to understand that it must be balanced. It must be arrayed in such a way that one color complements the other. And to the compliment that each of them bring to the other of them, it helps to represent and helps to reflect who it is you are. 160 plus years ago, as Capri said earlier, a little enslaved black woman traveled 200 miles, not on a 747, not on Amtrak, not by car or bus, but on foot, while she tended sheep and delivered babies, cooked food, chopped wood, cleared paths, and helped to pull wheels bogged down in mud out of a rut as they trekked from Mississippi to Utah, Salt Lake City, and then to San Bernardino. And that little black woman had enough courage to find a way to make the wheels of justice run and work for her. And she found her freedom that had been denied all of her life by the slave master that she was engaged to work for. And she was freed upon arrival here by courage. One of the works that she did was to organize the first AME church, the oldest religious organization in the city of Los Angeles, organized by people of color, by black people particularly. And that congregation has always focused its sight on serving the diversity of our communities. We are strong in our diversity, in our uniqueness, and the multiple colors and the multiple races and cultures and ethnicities that we represent and reflect. We're made strong. We're made a beautiful, vibrant people because that's what God intended for us to be in the middle of what God has done. So now we invite you to join all of us and to support our mayor in making sure that we call for those who cannot recognize and those who cannot appreciate and embrace that kind of diversity, step out of the way. If you created the mess, step away. Let someone else come in and clean up the mess and let this city become what the city needs to be. One that champions the rights and opportunities for everybody and the uniqueness of its own diversity. Thank you for this opportunity to make such an humble request. Bless you, man. Bless you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Boyd. As I mentioned, Rabbi Susan Goldberg spoke on a day that I stepped into this role. It was 9.5 years ago, but it's only seemed like 50, so you still look young. I don't know about me. I've probably aged way beyond those 9.5 years, but thank you for who you are, and thank you for what you've been in my life and to this city's life, Rabbi Susan Goldberg.
Yes, what a time, these 9.5 years. I'm wishing you and your family blessings on the journey ahead. one of the most Los Angeles of noises, no? When I left Echo Park, where I grew up, to go to college, I found it difficult to sleep because I didn't hear the helicopters. What a time of profound grief in our city, and a time of profound reality. You don't say things like this unless you've been feeling this and thinking this for some time. There is a lot of attention on these particular three leaders, but we know that anti-Black racism, discrimination towards indigenous people goes way beyond these leaders. The Jewish community has just come out of a time of what we call our high holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur specifically, we just experienced as a day of atonement where we take responsibility for the ways that we have caused harm personally and collectively in this past year, and for some beyond, if there's still harm to be repaired. Well, this is a situation of profound harm. And it's not a mystery what you need to do in these situations. The Jewish tradition has this path of what we call tshuva, but all traditions have these paths. It starts with taking full responsibility, saying out loud with great truth what has happened, without denying, explaining, trying to cover up. Just the profound truth of what we all know has happened. The next step is that you have to take actions of repair. You can't just say the words have to be said, but the words must be followed up by action. This, I hope, is about to begin a long and deep process for each of these leaders that will have them each personally reckoning with anti-Black racism, with their discrimination towards indigenous peoples, with their homophobia, with all of the things that are inside of them. And then a long process of making profound and real repair. Indeed, it's also an opportunity for all of us who've heard what just happened and what came out of these mouths and in these hearts to think personally, each of us, where are the places inside of ourselves that we need to be honest about our own anti-Black racism and bias? And then what can we do collectively, all of us as a city, to repair? No, I'm not a leader. That doesn't matter. Anti-Black racism is everywhere. So if you work in education, what can be done in education? If you work in the healthcare system, what can be done in the healthcare system? If you work in a library, what can be done in a library? If you're a social worker or a therapist, and on, an artist, a creator of media, what are all the ways that we need to root out anti-Black racism inside of our city and make change? We are given a profound opportunity right now. A profound opportunity for real and lasting change. It is important that we pray. It is important that we say out loud what is alive in our heart with somebody who can help us work it through. But that is not enough. We know we haven't even scratched the surface of what we can do in our criminal justice system, with policing, with education, with healthcare, with everything in this city. May this be for all of us a profound commitment or a recommitment to what we need to do, to the ongoing and necessary changes we need to make inside of our own hearts and inside of the city. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. May the one who brings peace above bring peace to all of us. And may we take the actions to repair. And we say, Amen.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Rabbi. Nice. Next, I'd like to ask Harut Tchijian to come forward on behalf of the Armenian Western Diocese to say a few words as well. Thank you. Is Harut here? No? Oh, okay. Well, Father, why don't you come? Sorry. Please, come on forward.
Soy el padre Arturo Corral, de aquí de la parroquia Nuestra Señora Reina de los Ángeles, la iglesia que está vecina aquí en la misma plaza del centro. Pertenezco a la Arquidiócesis de Los Ángeles y tenemos a nivel de la Arquidiócesis, cada domingo tenemos misas o celebraciones en 42 idiomas. Y es una bendición el poder hablar y platicar con Dios y con la comunidad en 42 idiomas cada domingo. Y es una bendición especialmente para mí aquí en la placita el poder hablar español y tener diferentes personas de diferentes países latinos. Yo quiero en este momento de dolor en esta ciudad de Los Ángeles pedirle a Dios de todo corazón que estemos abiertos a ver la riqueza de las otras personas. ¿Cómo puedo poner un ejemplo? Miren, yo disfruto mucho hacer ejercicio, me gusta correr y hay un parque aquí histórico, pero hay días que prefiero correr por el centro de la ciudad y me gusta caminar por todo lo que es la Grand, regresar por la Broadway y conocer los diferentes niveles. Cada vez que voy corriendo, tengo que pararme en los semáforos, en las esquinas. Y he aprendido en estos 7 años que cada vez que estoy en una esquina, me encuentro con gente de diferentes razas. Y es una experiencia única en Los Ángeles poder tener razas, gentes y colores en cada esquina. Mientras el semáforo cambia de color, yo veo que estoy en una diversidad. Y tiene uno que aprender a querer a los demás. Tiene uno que pararse como en el semáforo para poder contemplar que no soy yo solo. Y camina. Cada vez que voy corriendo, descubre uno que tanta raza diferente, los colores, los tamaños. Y dices tú, ¡qué bendición! ¿Cuándo aprenderé al ir corriendo la belleza de tanta cultura? Llegar al mundo chino, entrar a las tiendas al mismo tiempo, correr, llegar a la parte acá de modas, que entra y hay diferentes culturas vendiendo sus productos. Es rico. ¿Cuándo aprenderemos a que yo no estoy solo? ¿Cuándo aprenderé a que el otro me hace más rico con su riqueza, con su cultura, con su manera de hablar y que me hace más abierto al mundo? Yo he aprendido en el deporte que de veras lo más importante es saber tener apertura a los demás. Y tengo que aprender idiomas y tengo que aprender el inglés. Y lo que he aprendido es que cada día me corrigen. Todos los días me dicen, no se dice así, está mal, tienes que pronunciar. Y hay que aprender otro idioma para hablar con los demás. Es muy rico llegar a un restaurante y decir breakfast o desayuno, porque es lo mismo, pero uno tiene diálogo con la cultura. Yo tengo el deseo de ver en todo corazón como sacerdote católico que podamos ver la riqueza de las otras personas. Que no nos encerremos en nosotros mismos. Es muy bello ver la cultura y los colores y las diferencias y las expresiones de los demás. Todos los días nos comparamos. Todos los días tenemos una mentalidad de compararme si el otro está más bien o está más mal, que yo estoy más grande o más chico. Y todos los días tenemos la oportunidad de ver la riqueza de tener a los otros. Solo la otra persona me salva. Solo los otros me hacen vivir intensamente. Yo pienso que necesitamos aprender de los demás y ver su riqueza. I think that most of the speech, it was telling me that it should be in Spanish. Say, okay, I would like to practice my English. But say, no, it will be in Spanish. But I want to practice English. No, yeah, you have perhaps some errors. But I need to change and to do different words. So every day I learn new words. And I love that. We need to love Los Angeles. We need to be engaged. We need to have passion in the place where we live and passion for the people we are serving. Otherwise, we can say just words. We need to love the land, the steps that we are going doing every day. So it's the only way really to appreciate that the other person is a richness for me.
Mil gracias, Arturo Corral. Thank you so much for your words and for the love that you bring here every single day to this placita and to our city as well. Aziza Hassan is going to come forward next from New Ground. She's also been an amazing, amazing friend and leader. Thank you on a personal note for helping me get through the last couple of years, and thank you for being an unrelenting voice for justice and at this moment of our healing. Thank you.
Friends, as much as this hurts, I would be nowhere else. Nowhere else. When I first heard the news, I felt this pit in my stomach and my heart started to pound. I started to focus on my breath. I just tried to breathe, just focus on the breath. But it was hard to focus. It was hard because I was holding so many strong emotions. Anger, really strong anger. Disappointment, frustration, and hurt. Anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, hate, all of it, none of it has a place in Los Angeles. Not the Los Angeles we've all been working so hard to build. Only a year after our city and nation finally started to find its collective voice to affirm Black lives. This? So whether you're inside the meeting or outside of those rooms, we can't accept these kinds of attitudes or behaviors. We have to demand something better of our leaders, and especially ourselves. We have to be able to build compassion and understanding for our entire community, especially those who are marginalized. I think of all those parents, specific people, parents who have brought their children to those weekend events and to those meetings. And I can only imagine the hurt that they're holding right now. I think of the many who mentor my own kids, who show up to a lot of those meetings, and who don't always behave. And how we are stronger when trusted adults mentor and care for our loved ones. How when we support each other with compassion and empathy, both in public and behind closed doors, we all do better. So this is yet another reminder that the beautiful and diverse Los Angeles that we call home has a lot of work to do. So let this be a call, a wake-up call. Another call yet again and again and again, but let us actually wake up this time. To shine a light on the toxic words and biases that when uttered in private become an undercurrent that inform our actions. That Los Angeles deserves and to create spaces for all rather than diminishing one at the expense of another. Let it be a call to convene spaces for hard conversations that matter to us, where we can be able to talk about the pain and the lived stories that spring from those places of deep hurt. We have to be able to not shy away from the hard conversations because they're hard, because we have to get through them. We have no other choice. Capri, as you were talking and reminding me of the words of actually Martin Luther King Jr., hate can't drive out hate. Only light and love can do that. And I think of how hard it is to hold light and love right now, and how important it is all at the same time. And so I hope this will also be a call for us, like Capri's department just talked about peace senders across Los Angeles, and they're asking for calls for people to stand up, to be a model, to be something different. I hope we all answer that call, to vision together, to be part of the healing together, and to hold accountability and compassion all side by side so that we can rise in a moment that matters, in a moment where we can address the harm and the real necessary steps towards healing.
Thank you, Aziza. Thank you so much. I want to also acknowledge Sero Megertichian as well. Thank you for being here. It means so much. And the Armenian community who has led so often, and we have been there so often for the Armenian community in moments of hate. And keep, even though this is local, know right now that the Armenian people are under attack and what pain that they hold in the existence of their nation right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and greetings. Greetings, all of you. I'm a survivor of genocide. And the word genocide means a lot of things. My grandparents were the survivors, the first survivors. And whenever I was a kid, and when I was asking them about what happened, their teaching was, every single day you open your eyes, do something good to someone. Which means, I do believe, it's my faith, that God created the world, created us, created the human being. We all share the land. We can't simply say, this is mine, this is ours. The city is not mayor, council, this and that. The city is for us all. And if we cannot accept each other, we cannot survive. Therefore, as a person, if I don't love myself, I can't achieve anything. As a family, as a communities, as a churches, whatever, if we don't love each other, we can't continue and we can't survive. What is the opposite of love and kindness? Hate. What is the end of hate? Disaster. So why we should go towards that dimension instead of we can go the opposite direction? Let us love each other. Let us build this city because this city belongs to us. God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, very much. Next, and my apologies when this ends, and my apologies for being on the phone for a second. Our daughter is injured at school, and I'm going to have to leave in a second to go get her. But we have two more speakers for which I'll stay. I would like to ask Rabbi Hornsky to come forward. And thank you for not only being here on behalf of the Jewish community, but representing what we heard and the work that we have to do across our intersectionality today. And thank you for who you are as well in the City of Angels. Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for talking about what it means to make true tshuva, to make repair. When I heard the news yesterday, we were very busy celebrating yet another holiday. It is a season for the Jewish people, and this holiday is about our journey. Our people were in a very narrow place. The land of Egypt calls Mitzrayim a very narrow place. And they raised their voices and they cried out. It is a season where we get to cry out. We should be crying out, and God should be listening to our voices. We should be in that place of pain that we lift it up and we share it. And we lift it up so that it can be answered. When the Jewish people's prayers were answered, they were taken out of Egypt, and they didn't go into the perfect place. It wasn't right there before them. There was a journey. My friends, we've got to commit to this journey in front of us. When they wandered in the desert, they built Sukkot, little booths, these fragile homes. And that is what we are in the midst of celebrating this holiday of Sukkot, where we erect for us temporary shelters, and they are fragile. And I feel like our city feels very, very fragile. They are fragile, and yet they are a shelter. They are a bit of shade. Each one of us have moved our chairs to get in the shade, right? There's a place where we know that we are exposed in this fragility, and we are exposed in our sukkot because they are not solid spaces, and yet they are sheltering. The thing about sukkot is that you don't just build a temporary house. You have to lashev. You have to sit and dwell in it. You got to be in it. And you don't be in it by yourself, ever. You bring guests to your sukkah. And when you bring those guests, you may share a meal. You may share a cup of coffee. You may share anything, but what we share most of all in these spaces is dialogue. It is conversation. It is me and you together. When the Jewish people were journeying, it wasn't one day and it wasn't 1 week. It's 40 years, friends. 40 years. So I know we've cried out too many times and we've called it out too many times. And it feels nearly impossible, but I think we are on a journey that says cry out, but then sit. Sit and gather and talk and invite in. And the thing that we left behind was that narrow place. There was a lot of narrowness in hearts right now. A lot of narrowness. But the sukkah is open, right? It's open to not just guests, but it's literally open on its sides. Its roof is something you can see through. And in its being open, that's what I'm asking for us to do, is to open our hearts a little bit wider and our minds a whole lot wider. Open our hearts and our minds to be in that space of dialogue, to be in that space of repair, to be in that space of seeing. Now, when we dwell in the sukkah, we also sometimes literally sleep in our sukkah, and that's what I did, and I'm super blessed to have 4 kiddos, but my 8-year-old decided we needed to sleep in the sukkah the last 2 nights. And as we laid down, it was quite beautiful, and we're looking up and the twinkly lights and the stars, and he says, "Mom." I said, "Yes." And he said, "I think we should pray." And it's not because he's a rabbi's kid. He's just a nice kid. And I said, "What's on your mind?" And he said, "I want God to answer some things. And I think you need to make changes, Mom. Aren't you supposed to be important?" Okay. I said, "What's on your mind?" And he said, "Dear God, I want people to have enough food. And I want people to have houses. Like real houses, even if it's a bunch of small sukkot everywhere, but houses for them to be in. I don't want them living on the streets. Mom, I think people should be nicer to each other." And I said, "Are you talking to me?" He said, "No, I'm talking to God." So he said, "Dear God," and he goes on, and I said, "Yes." And then I said, "Amen." And we sat in that space where the mind of a child is open wide. They are open to embracing all and to welcoming all and to pushing hate aside. What did he want? He wanted love. He wanted repair. He wanted justice in the city. And he wanted human beings to care for each other. Friends, we have to be in dialogue, and we have to do it for ourselves. We have to do it for our kids. Hate is pushed out by light and by love. Hate is also pushed out by conversation and by education and by being that open, beautiful soul of a child. They don't know hate unless taught hate. And so I'm going to put it on us to do the repair. I'm going to put it on us to being in dialogue. And I want to recognize that in our Torah portion today, this week, we're ending the life of Moses. He doesn't go into the promised land, and he is that leader that has taken them on this journey. He doesn't go, but he prepared the people to do the work after him. So, Mayor, you have prepared us to continue this dialogue, and it is a journey. It's a journey, and we have to be committed to doing that work, and we have to be committed to those acts of loving kindness, to spreading love, not hate, and to spreading dialogue and community. So open your hearts, open your sukkah, open your being. May God bless us as we continue on this journey, knowing it's long and it's hard, but it's worth it.
Thank you, Rabbi. Finally, I'd like to ask Brother Umar Hakim, who I've known for many, many years. We had a moment on the wall over there, and we've been through some moments in our city. He's been a peacemaker and a peace bringer and a peace blesser. I'd like him to say some final thoughts, then I'll come back to close things out. Thank you, Brother Umar.
Check 1, 2. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Before I even say my name, I would like to acknowledge the indigenous of this land. For I myself am a part of that indigenous community. I pray that we all are answers to their prayers in the midst of their struggle. Amen. My name is Umar Hakim Day. I'm the board chair for LA Voice and the founder for Encourage. As Capri mentioned, this is a call to action. This is a responsibility and an obligation that we have as pious, civic leaders. I want to ask you a question as a LA Voice organizer. In the past year, we've been doing a power building campaign. The definition for power is the ability to respond and act. So I would like to ask you, as leaders of your constituents, of your audience, of your base, how will you utilize your power? These 3 or 4 individuals, they empowered us. They gave us a new meaning in what we have to do now. So now, they have given us the right to ask for human security in this city. They've given us the right to utilize our power together. I could be selfish and say, hey, I only want power for my community. I could be selfish and say, hey, I only want power for my block. I could be selfish and say, I only want power for my color. But I'd rather say I would like to utilize my power for the people. Los Angeles, thank you, but hold applause, please, hold applause. Los Angeles is in a true transition between mayors, thank you, my friend, creating a new situation. These are all transitions of power. You have to ask yourselves, where do you fit in? I come from a people. My mother is by the way of Guyana. Her parents are by the way of the Congo and Ethiopia. So I am of the Bantu. We have the opportunity to create something that's truly special in this city. I've been all around the world, around the country, and I've never been in a city quite like Los Angeles. So you have to ask yourself, please ask yourself, this is not homework, this is more of a reflection of what we have to do as Angelenos, as a resident of this community, as leaders. Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessing upon him, he said that if you see an injustice, you can fix it with your hands, or you can address it with your speech. But if we leave it in our heart, that is the weakest of faith. So I would like to ask a favor of you right now, if I may. Can I have you please stand? And if you have the ability to stand, you can still sit. If you don't have the ability to stand, please sit down. Thank you for responding. Take a look at your neighbor. I want you to understand that we represent each other, not in a silo, but collectively. Right now, if your ballots have reached your home, we have the opportunity to express our power. Vote early. And we're not just voting, but now we have to align our voting with those who's going to represent our values, who's going to represent not only my community, but our community. I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you vote for the person who's going to give you freedom from fear, freedom of expression, freedom from want, and freedom of worship. If that person cannot align with your value, then you need to identify who can identify with your values on the ballot or even the measures, because Los Angeles is in the transition. So the best speech is a short speech. I would like to end right here, but I'd like to thank you for inviting me to this situation, Capri and Jumana, and we have some work to do. Is it going to be easy? No, it's never been easy. I've been on this earth since 1970, and don't start counting. Don't do that. I've been on this earth since 1970. Najee Ali, I've been here since 1970. And it's been an uphill battle ever since. As an African American, black, or even as a more Muslim, it's been an uphill battle. So I can only imagine what you are going through. I can only imagine. So please recognize that we have power. And how are we going to use it? Thank you.
And don't worry, Brother Umar. Like Odilia, you and I are pleased to say, who were born in 1971, the 1970s, you're our elder brother, and we love the 50s, the sweet 50s. No, you're not. I'm not old, so you're not old. So I had a conversation with a council member, and then I'll close. I promise I'll be brief. And he said two things to me. He said, 2 years ago, you told me how you think in your heart to make sure that your private thoughts are never bad thoughts, to make sure that your public speech is never bad speech. And he said how prescient that was. He said, you said that, and I thought it was a little aside. And really, that's the work that I invite everybody to do, that Rabbi Goldberg invited us to do, that many of you said, we can make this all an external thing because we have plenty to be pissed about, and everybody's been wronged. But we have to do that internal work that's just as painful, because no one of us is innocent from eradicating from our hearts those feelings. I also had another person who came up to me and quoted back to me something that I've said since I've been mayor that sometimes is mistaken for weakness, but I say this to publicly, and I say this to other political leaders. The exercise of power is not what you're willing to hold on to and keep, but what you're willing to give up and share. We could not have passed countywide measures on homelessness or transportation if we hadn't shared or not looked for credit. We couldn't do half of the things we need to do. You can't run a family without compromise. You can't be in a relationship with another human being. And so first and foremost, I'd invite again my three colleagues to think about the expression of their power and what they can give up in this moment and not hold to as we do the same thing. When I drove in to drop my daughter off at school this morning, I drove through Koreatown, saw folks arriving for work to open up Oaxacan restaurants and mosques and churches and synagogues on that great east-west boulevard. We cut up, and we always try to avoid the freeway. That's smart driving in Los Angeles. And we came down Beverly. And the first view I had of City Hall was framed by the new gateway into and from historic Filipino town, the first Filipino town in our country. We celebrated 20 years of that, and it's it's Filipino Heritage Month this month as well. And a moment when for the last 24 or 30 hours I had felt so dark and so broken and so helpless in so many ways, it was a reminder of our city And I appreciate the voices that reminded us of what this city is. You're right, Brother Umar, there's no place like this. It's a low bar to be one of the best places in the world because every city and every land has so much repair and work to do. But I too share that there's no place I'd rather be and no group of people I'd rather be doing that with. We're the ones who need to connect now. Connect geography and connect time. The geography that separates us and that past that we need to know in order to acknowledge the work that has to be done today in order for us to see the future that we all want to walk towards tomorrow. We have to commit today to boosting Black and brown wealth in our city. We have to commit ourselves today to eradicating the casual sexism. One council member said, well, I'm so used to being called homophobic things, sometimes I don't even get offended when I should be because I've come to accept it and internalize it. We will defend each other. We will write back in Indigenous voices and make sure that we listen and not just speak in our civic story. And because this also was directed at our young people, I wanted to also say again to our young people that our work is with you, not just as parents, but as a city, to make sure a Black boy or Oaxacan girl doesn't look at a vista more narrow than anyone else simply because of where they live, that they don't have a more painful life than those who aren't, more obstacles to overcome than their classmates. I've seen, I want to bear witness to one last thing, the rebirth of coalitions that we got a little lazy in this city about. I don't know if it was George Floyd, I don't know if some of it predates that. Part of it's always a new generation, the urgency of a climate crisis, but I'm seeing that come up among those who are younger than us in a way that is seamless and inspiring. And I know from some of our elders the work that you did in the toughest moments of this country to first model that and to build that in this city as well. But I think the honest diagnosis is those coalitions by and large have been weakened since 1992. They've been dormant for too long. And they can't just be replicated the way we did it before. They require new organizations to be founded and old organizations to be re-strengthened, and not to treat power as zero-sum. We can't have communities of color look at your gains as my losses and vice versa. We can't look within communities at the color or the height or the dress that you wear as the indicators of the power that you hold. And so I'll close where I started. I hope we all find kindness tomorrow as we ask for justice today. In our high holy days, one of the lessons I heard and that I'll leave you with is that we're not required to finish the work of healing the world, yet neither are we permitted to desist from it. Don't take on the burden of having to finish this, though we should strive to, but don't let anybody turn away from it, even in the most painful moments. Please follow up with us how you're organizing, what you are doing, what you need the city and city leaders to be present for, and where you need us to step to the side and help amplify or illuminate. And let us show this city who we are. Let us show ourselves who we are. Let us remind our leaders of what this moment calls them to do and to be. And let us be that city of angels. Thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate it. Have a blessed day.